j.phifer here, author and media producer of the Dark Forever, Killing Monster series, and Corporate Monsters. So, let's chat about villainy today. What is a villain? We all think we know who the bad guy is, the mustache-twirling guy, but really, the villain depends on the point of view of the person, right? For most villains, they're not the villain, they're the good guy. So what is the definition of a villain? Everybody's a villain except you, right? We're not the villain. Everybody else is the villain. But you think of any situation in your life where you may have told somebody no. Maybe you rejected somebody. Maybe you broke up with somebody. Maybe you got divorced. You were definitely the villain to them, right? You were the villain. So being comfortable with being the villain is a whole different matter entirely, but at some point you have been the villain to somebody else. Now you might be thinking, no, I was not the villain, I was the hero because I was doing the right thing, but to the other person you were the villain. So villainy is a very large topic. Somebody else is always the villain, we're never the villain. So it really depends on your point of view. Take for instance Titanic. Like, we watched Titanic, great movie, but we see Jack and Rose together, we go, aw, it's romantic, that's great. But Jack was kind of the villain in that story. You look at her fiance, Hartley, Cale, he didn't abuse her, he wasn't a bad guy until she started messing around with this punk 17-year-old kid on the Titanic. Now imagine if you're married to Rose, she's 16, 17, and you're engaged, and she starts messing around with some kid on this boat to America. You're going to get pretty pissed off. So, yeah, you might even at the gun, as the Titanic goes down, start shooting at him because he is the villain. So it just depends. I know I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail for calling Jack the villain, but in his perspective, he was just a homewrecker. And I understand Cal 100%. But it just depends on your point of view, doesn't it? Of who really is the villain. And now we all know villains like, in the movie, like Freddy Krueger is obviously a psychopath, right? Psychopaths are usually the villains because they don't have any empathic qualities. They don't care for somebody. They don't, they don't have the empathic quality. So pretty much most of the time, we can see them as the villain. But what about somebody who blows up a building that has 100 serial killers in it? You would call him the hero? Okay, well, he's the hero because he killed all those bad guys. What if he had a family in the building? Is he still a hero? Or is that just collateral damage? Is he an anti-hero? All right? The Wolverine or Punisher type, Batman type. Villainy is very complex. And it's a word, being the villain is really the word that we use to justify making somebody else the bad guy and we're the good guy. Usually villains often are just extreme examples of ourselves. Look at Maggie's series in The Dark Forever. A lot of those villains, from Jericho to Quentin to Napoleon Savage, they are mirrors to Maggie. They are a warning to her of who she could become. She could become each one of those, and they all hold the same beliefs as she does in a lot of those books. The only difference is that for them, the results matters more than how they get there. The ends justify the means, and that's a huge methodology that is used by people who end up becoming the villain. That it doesn't matter how you get there. All that matters is that you get there. So it doesn't matter how I save the world as long as it gets saved. This is Thanos' thing, right? He wants to destroy half of the universe in order to save it, right? So we call him the villain, naturally, because he wants to murder trillions of people. But in the end, his goal is honorable. He wants to help half of those people. He wants to save the universe. But obviously he's the villain. So in his mind, he's obviously not. So villainy really has a lot to do with the ends versus the means. The ends justify the means by any means necessary. And when you get to that place that it no longer matters how you get somewhere, only that you do, at the expense of morality, at the expense of what's right, then you start to become the villain, and you go down that villainous path. Extreme Measures, a great movie. If you've never seen it, it has Hugh Grant and Gene Hackman. And Gene Hackman, I'm gonna spoil alert here, by the way. Gene Hackman is trying to solve paralysis, but in order to do that, he needs to study people with spine problems and learn to regrow nerves. But in order to do that, I mean, it's obviously a noble sentiment to solve paralysis, and he's very close. But he's been kidnapping homeless people and operating on them to do it. So that is not noble, and that is not heroic in any way. So his result is a good result. But his means is evil. So when the ends justify the means, that's when you start to go into villainous territory. And it's hard for us to know how to get the results without bending down to those more darker means to get there. And that's where, as humanity, that's kind of where we get into problems at. Because it's obviously, we all agree that somebody like from Hellraiser, Pinhead, Demon, all he wants is debauchery, evil, destruction, perverted, monstrous, sadistic, torturing. He's evil. There's no redemptive qualities in him. Same thing with Freddy Krueger. He's pretty evil, killing kids, and it's pretty evil. But what about Darth Vader, who he's killed thousands of children too. He's killed people. He's killed entire worlds. But at the end, he's realized that going down that path is not what he wanted, and he wanted to reconnect with the sun and do the right thing. So now we see him as a redemptive villain. So the ends justifying the means is a huge pathway to villainy, but where do you draw the line? So anyway, that's just one of the things I want to talk about. This is probably villainy is, and the dark psychology behind it is an ongoing discussion. I'll probably have other videos about this. Solomon Ivy in the Killing Forever series, which has just come out now, he is very comfortable playing both sides of the coin, the good and the bad. And he's very comfortable with his shadow self. And when you're comfortable with your shadow, the shadow, that's a whole nother discussion, but the shadow is parts of yourself that you deny, you blame, you curse, you condemn, and that creates a whole nother issue inside yourself. There's a saying that goes, I'd rather be whole than good. And when you get to that place where you'd rather be whole than good, then you started moving up the evolutionary ladder. When you understand that phrase, that's huge. But that'll be for another discussion. So anyway, I'm already at 8 minutes, so let's just end it there, and we'll continue with the topic of villainy next time. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.